This is Paris' most expensive neighborhood. Apartments here sell for millions. But what's weird to me is that no one really knows about it. I'm French, I live in Paris, and when people tell me about Saint-Germain-des-Prés, they always mention the cute cafes, the rich cultural life, and the elegant avenues, but they don't really know anything about all the hidden wealth and the neighborhood secrets. So let's investigate and try to understand why this neighborhood became the most expensive in all of Paris and what it's like to visit as a normal person. So one thing that makes this neighborhood special is that it has a deep history, and you will see this is important for later. So originally it was a countryside village which centered around this church, built in the 6th century, and it was in the middle of the fields. So this is why the place is called Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which means Saint-Germain of the fields. But quickly the neighborhood becomes a big cultural hotspot, and the intellectual life revolved around cafes like this one, which is the oldest cafe of Paris, and it's still in the same location as when it opened in 1686, and through the years it has attracted famous people linked to the Enlightenment or the French Revolution. Basically what I'm trying to tell you is that this neighborhood has been on the map for a while. And for my American viewers, there's no better example of that as this apparently random building. This might not look like much today, but this is where the treaty that gave the US its independence was signed in 1783. This is a painting of the events, and you might recognize Benjamin Franklin in it. And this is a thing I absolutely love about the neighborhood. You can just walk around randomly and find so many hidden gems. But the real reason why I want to show you Saint-Germain-des-Prés today is because it's way more than just a neighborhood. It became a myth that still shapes how the world sees Paris today. And to understand what I mean, we need to talk about this cafe called Café de Flore and this one called Les Deux Magots. So you've probably seen them in movies or just pretty much everywhere on social media. Seriously, they are everywhere. It seems like everyone wants to pick with them. There's always someone filming in front of these cafes, and they have played a huge role in turning this neighborhood into the symbol of the Parisian way of life that's still romanticized by media today. And this is a topic I unpack a lot on the channel, but this is not new. It started around 100 years ago when a lot of foreigners, especially Americans, were coming to Paris after World War I. It seems like it really was the place to be for aspiring writers and anyone who wanted to live a more free and bohemian life. Hemingway in particular became associated with the neighborhood. If you've seen the movie Midnight in Paris, you know that he seemed like an intense guy. He would spend hours writing in cafes and, let's say it, probably drinking a lot. He even wrote a book about his time in Paris, which really contributed to the reputation of the neighborhood. And starting in the 1940s, we have two of the most well-known French writers of the time, Sartre and de Beauvoir, who basically turned Café de Flore and Les Deux Magots into their office. Like it really was their living room. So much so that the square in front of Les Deux Magots was renamed after them. And over the years, many famous people were drawn to the neighborhood and its intellectual life, and this turned both these cafes and this neighborhood into a legend. Because what you need to understand is that all of these people, they were already huge back then, so their fame was attracting a lot of normal people to the neighborhood. Also, quick local tip, if you're ever in Paris, just know that these two cafes are very touristy. Like if you want to go there, that's fine, I won't judge you, but I'll give you tips about what locals do in the neighborhood in the next section. Anyways, by the 60s and 70s, Saint-Germain-des-Prés is not a hidden gem anymore. More and more people are attracted by its reputation of sophistication, history, and cultural prestige, and obviously this attracts companies and marks a turn towards serious money for the neighborhood. So Yves Saint Laurent, who was a rising star at the time after working for Dior, opens his first shop there in the 1960s. And this is a start of a progressive shift towards luxury that reached its peak in 2012 when Louis Vuitton opens a huge new store. It was under construction yesterday when I visited, but as you can see behind the scaffolding, the location really is symbolic. It has one entrance facing Café de Flore and the other right by Les Deux Magots, which are the two legendary cafes we already talked about. Also, interestingly enough, it replaced a beloved old bookstore. And the French luxury brands, they knew what they were doing. They wanted to use the neighborhood's reputation to not just sell products, but an entire image of exclusivity and sophistication. And honestly, it worked because now Saint-Germain-des-Prés is one of the main areas for luxury shopping in Paris. I've personally always known this area like this, favorites, but there's all the big brands you already know about, and also some independent creators for people who know about them. But I have to say that it does feel different from historically flashier neighborhoods like the Golden Triangle, where the streets are overrun with supercars and it's all about showing off. Like here in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, the vibe is way more subtle. You can tell that the wealthy locals who have lived there for a long time are reattached to the cultural heritage of the neighborhood, and that they are not too happy about the luxury stores replacing bookshops. I've heard a lot of older Parisians say that the left bank is all about culture and the right bank is centered around business and money, but I feel this hasn't been the case for many years. As you'll see in a bit, you really need deep pockets to live here, but there's still this idea of quiet sophistication where people have both financial and cultural capital. And what I find so funny is that this old money vibe became a trend on TikTok, and it's re-attracting so many people to the cafes. Like I can personally remember a before and after TikTok for these cafes. Like don't get me wrong, before TikTok these cafes were still touristy, but now they're really set for social media. But anyways, don't get distracted by the TikTok aesthetics or the luxury shops. The real old money is not in the streets, it's right above in the fancy apartments and hidden mansions, and we'll get deep into that in the next section. But one way we can actually see this alliance between culture and money is through this tiny museum located on the most expensive street of Paris. So this area has been shaping what people see as high culture for a really long time, but today I just need to tell you about this guy, Delacroix. Even if you don't know his name, you've probably already seen this painting. It hangs at the Louvre. And if you go through this door and this really quiet courtyard, you can access his house and workshop that is now a museum. And this is the perfect opportunity to see what's really going on the most expensive street of Paris for only the price of a museum ticket. So the house is pretty big, and obviously you can see some art there, but I have to admit that my favorite thing is the secret garden, which feels so cute and relaxing. And I've booked this activity on Klook. Klook has been a partner of the channel for a while, and if you're traveling anywhere, you need to try them. They have so many great deals on activities both in Paris and around the world. In Paris in particular, they have the Klook Paris Pass, which lets you book many activities at a discounted rate with just one ticket. So if you want to try them, go ahead and click the link in the description below or use my code LucileYTKlook for a discount. So as I was telling you, the museum is on the most expensive street of Paris, and Saint-Germain-des-Prés is the most expensive neighborhood of Paris. And here I really need you to understand how expensive things can get. Prices per square meter are around 28 to 35,000 euros, which is between $3,000 and $3,700 per square foot. Like seriously, even this tiny and let's say it ugly studio sold for €500,000 just because it's on the most expensive street of Paris. And of course, people who live there are not just buying tiny studios. They are buying massive places that often cost upwards of €3 million. And when a property is really rare, a real estate agent even said that there is no upper price. So just for fun, let's look at a few of these rare properties. So a lot of them are probably sold off market, but we're gonna go on this real estate website called Belle Demeure, which you should only look at if you want to feel poor. And here you have a bunch of really expensive apartments. Like seriously, this one looks like a palace. There's even some really nice painting on the ceiling. We also have this one that's almost 11 million euros. It's obviously really nice, but it's a bit excessive for a 3-bedroom. But the true exclusive thing I want to show you are these real fancy private townhouses called hôtels particuliers. So obviously this has nothing to see with a hotel where you book a room. It's just a private home built for really rich families. You can think of it as the city version of a castle. And this one also costs almost 11 million euros. And it's a 4-bedroom located on one of the most exclusive streets of Paris. And for that price, you even get a tiny garden. What's crazy to me is that if you walk in the street, you really have no idea. Like I've personally been on the street so many times, but I never knew there was such an expensive property there. And you know, that makes sense because French old money people are extremely private and very secretive around their wealth for many reasons. So it's really impossible to know that all of these expensive properties are around you. And you know, unless you're part of the 0.01%, you'll never set foot in one of these. But One thing you can do if you're in the neighborhood and you want to see a hôtel particulier for yourself is going to the Ralph Lauren store. And this is not a joke, the Ralph Lauren of Saint-Germain-des-Prés is in a massive mansion that dates from 1683. It is really beautiful and super fancy, and at one time it even was the Dutch embassy. It has 5 floors and a really beautiful garden, and they've remodeled in a way that really respects the original style of the townhouse. So you have all the fancy mirrors, the molding, the fireplaces. They really did a good job with the renovation and apparently even hired historical consultants. But what's even crazier to me is that while normal people are struggling to buy tiny apartments, ultra-rich people are lining up to buy these places. The ultra-luxury market has increased 40% in 2 years, and apparently there's not enough inventory because real estate agents are saying that there's a waiting list for apartments over 4 million euros in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. So if you're like me, you're probably wondering who are these people and why would they buy such expensive places? And let me tell you, I've done some research. So first we have rich French people who have been rich for many generations, and a lot of them inherit apartments from families or just became successful in business and want to move to the neighborhood because they want their kids to go to the best schools. And most of them buy homes that are between 1 million and 4 million euros, which is already a lot of money, but nothing crazy if you compare to the prices of the neighborhood. So it's really foreign buyers that are driving the market in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. I found that over half of people who buy a place over 4 million euros are not French, and if we go over 7 million euros, then 80% of people are foreign buyers. And as to why they buy in the neighborhood, I found a quote by the director of the website we were just on, who says, "People buy in London or New York for business, but they buy in Paris for pleasure and for social status." So the foreign buyers, they're not buying these apartments to live in them. And still, according to that Le Monde article, a lot of the foreign buyers in Saint-Germain-des-Prés are rich Americans. Because to them, it's like owning a piece of history and buying into the myth of the neighborhood that we've already explored quite a lot in this video. It's like the ultimate flex both financially and culturally. On my side, although I love exploring the neighborhood and discovering its secrets, I've always found funny that it's a status symbol for some people. Because it's also a big student neighborhood, and when I first moved to Paris as a student, this is the first neighborhood I fell in love with. I even lived on Boulevard Saint-Germain for a summer in one of those tiny apartments that I've already talked about on the channel. And to be honest, while this neighborhood has this really fancy old Paris feel, all the cultural things are either cheap or free if you're a student, and it's not really stuck in the past. Like, there's so many things to do, there's always some new cool spots popping up that you can enjoy at any budget, and it's one of my favorite places for restaurants. I've included all my favorites in my Paris food map, but one of my most recent ones is this one called La Brasserie des Prés. It is located in the cutest street right across from the oldest cafe of Paris that we saw before, and I went there with Théo, and they have all the French classics at a really good price. Like, for example, for starters, I had the foie gras, while Théo had the French onion soup, which was extra cheesy. And then for mains, we shared the chicken and the steak frites, which you absolutely need to try if you're coming to Paris. It's just a steak with fries, but it's so delicious. And then the desserts were incredible, and we tried 3 different ones. This one is a meringue dessert with fruits called vacherin meringue. Then we have a classic crème brûlée, and of course my favorite, French toast, but made the French way, so it's very crunchy and caramelized. And that's also where I leave you. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out one of the ones that are on screen right now, and I'll see you there. Bye for now.